What does it take to flip a congressional seat in Indiana? What does it take to hold one? Or maybe most importantly, who are the people willing to step up and fight for Hoosier families in Washington? This is Turn Left, Running for Congress 2026. We're sitting down with the Indiana Democratic candidates running for Congress in the 2026 primary. This is your chance to hear directly from the people who want to represent you, not just their talking points, but their stories, their values, and their vision for Indiana's future. All right. Welcome back to another episode of Turn Left, Running for Congress 2026. You see who I have with me. You see that I have one of the most astonishingly amazing state senators that we have had in our state house in a very long time, a history maker, and someone who is my friend. Like, I know I say people are my friend, but that's my dog. Yo, y'all, welcome to the show. Senator J.D. Ford, who is running for Congress in the 5th District. J.D., welcome to the show.
Dana, thanks so much for having me on. Always appreciate, getting a chance to sit and talk with you.
And see, what people don't know is for a while there, you and I were on the Rainbow Tour. Either you were opening and I was closing or vice versa. People don't know. We were in high demand.
That's true. And the other thing that you and I both kind of disclosed to each other was that when we were on the candidate circuit together, the candidate circuit really launched, I think, your second circuit, right? Mm-hmm. When we were on the candidate circuit together, I was just in so awe of you, of just going into spaces where people didn't look like you, and you commanded that room. You showed them who we are as, Indiana Democrats, and that we can lead and we can get things done. And so I was just so in awe of you as a candidate for running against the speaker, no less. So,
but see, I got the confidence to run because I watched you 2 years before. And how do I navigate this space and being an openly gay candidate, not hiding from myself? I watched to see how you were being received, and I was like, okay, it's not bad out here. The water's warm. We can do this. And I think that the joy is that we saw in each other ourselves.
That's right.
And we just rooted each other on. And I'm so proud of you because then 2 years after I ran, you ran and won.
That's right.
And you won re-election in the Senate. And now you have turned your attentions to Congress.
That's right.
First, before we get started, I know there are some people that know your history, but give them a little bit about who you are and where you come from.
Yeah, sure. So as you mentioned, Dana, I'm J.D. Ford. I am an experienced two-term state senator for District 29. And, I've served in the state house, for 2 terms now. You mentioned, my election in 2018. And so I know a little something about, flipping a red district to blue, because that's exactly what we did in 2018. And when we did that, we defeated a long-term sitting Republican state senator, and also made history by just being the lone Democrat to represent portions of Hamilton County. But as you know, my claim to fame was, our only out-serving member of the General Assembly. That was in 2018, and I still remain the only openly out-serving member of the LGBTQ plus community, which is both an honor and sometimes, a deep responsibility because, I'm not a member of the trans community, right. But yet, I'm speaking on behalf of their community. And so it's an honor to do that. But also, I also understand, that I don't have that lived experience, so, but, I served as, our caucus chair. I'm currently serving as our caucus whip. And so I rose through the ranks of leadership in our caucus and took on some additional responsibilities. I've served on some key important committees while serving at the State House. So obviously serving as our ranking minority member on the Senate Education and Career Development Committee, where I fought for our students and I fought for our teachers and for our public schools. I've served on the Military and Veterans Committee, where, I want to make sure that, folks who serve our nation, when they come back, that we take care of them. That is the responsibility that we owe our veterans, is to make sure that they have everything that they need. And also served on our ethics committee, which, is a brief stint on the ethics committee, but just making sure that my colleagues are, we're all holding each other accountable, to our Senate ethics committee. So, and before I became to the State House, I've served in a lot of different nonprofit roles here in Central Indiana, where I got a lot of good nonprofit experience. And before that, I'm a Hoosier by choice. So originally grew up in Northeast Ohio. I went to school at the University of Akron in Akron, Ohio. My first job out of college was here in Central Indiana, which is where I landed, and kind of, put my roots down. And so I've called Indiana home for quite some time, and I love Indiana. And honestly, that's one of the reasons why I ran for office, is because I know how much Indiana has to offer. And then the last thing I'll just say is that, I really got my values and my work ethic, just watching my dad and mom, live the American dream as best that they could. My dad is a union truck driver, which is why labor rights is so important to me. I went to school on a little bit of a scholarship, because of that. My mom worked with our elderly as an assisted care facility administrator. So just watching her, really enjoy her job. And then the last thing I'll say is that my grandparents were elected officials. So I saw the value.
Know that.
Yes. So I saw the value of public service, kind of through that lens of just watching, neighbors come up to my grandparents and just say, hey, thanks so much for, tackling whatever issue it was. And I really thought to myself, how cool is it that my grandparents, get to help people like that? And I think that's really planted that seed of public service, and so everything that I've done, Dana, in my 8 years in the Senate, is everything that I'm going to continue to do when I'm your member of Congress for CD5.
I love it. I love it. So now, one of the things that I usually end up saying to the Democrats in the General Assembly after each session is, I love you, and I know y'all need therapy. Because it takes special people to listen to some of the MAGAs in there and the ultra right wingers in there and some of the stuff they say about us as humans. Yeah. But in so doing, there have been times that you've been able to stop a bad bill from being super bad by adding some amendments. Obviously, they're not putting a lot of our legislation on the floor, but you've been able to improve bad bills. But in doing so, you had to be able to establish relationships and work across the aisle. Give us an idea of how you were able to do that and try to build relationships with people who, honestly, JD, they don't even want us here.
I know. Yeah. Yeah. Let me first just say that, when you walk into the institution like the state Senate, your word is your handshake. Mm-hmm. And so when you tell people you are going to do something, you have to do it, right? And then if you're not going to do it, you have to kind of explain why and say why you're not going to do it. And so, I've always operated off of that mentality. The other thing I like to do is keep a mental dossier of just kind of stuff I've learned, from different colleagues. So that kind of helps, normalize and kind of humanize, some of these issues that can get really complex, Mm-hmm. And so, and then obviously we can, have these policy conversations, but, I still like to, shoot a quick text or have a quick phone call just to check in with some of my colleagues just to see how they're doing. And I think that one-on-one connection is so important and so vital to some of the work that we're able to do. And so just for an example, just attaching some amendments, what I like to do is, take that amendment, go talk to the author of the bill and just say, hey, this is what I'm trying to do. What do you think? And sometimes they're agreeable to that and sometimes they're not. But I would like to think that I'm quietly working behind the scenes, as an effective, bipartisan senator because I am able to attach, a lot of these amendments. And I'll give you just one quick story about that. Is that I'm sitting in caucus, I filed an amendment. The author of the bill says, "Hey, could you step out of caucus?" And he's like, "Oh, gosh, I really love this amendment." And so we were able to kind of, talk about it, and he ended up accepting my amendment. And so, to your point, that's how we do things. And what I want people to know is that, my past behaviors is indicative of future performance, right? And so I'm going to continue to keep doing that, when I go to Washington, D.C. I know sometimes people want to go there and, kind of be on TV and grandstand. Like, that's fine when we need to do that when we're standing up for our values. And certainly I'm going to do that. But I'm also going to be quietly working behind the scenes to get things done and to bring back, money to Congressional District 5 and to, be effective in passing legislation that's going to improve the lives of Hoosiers and Americans.
I love that, because I think that experience that you've had in the State House, being at times incredibly adversarial, will help, because I believe that we're going to swing the House, this election, and Dana, you're going to be able to go in.
For once in my career, I might be in the majority, and how exciting is that?
Well, lucky you. I'll never be in the majority, ever. Yes. But I think that actually is one of those things that I anticipate with, if you were to win, is your ability to go in and start establishing relationships with people right. on both sides of the aisle for the good of your community. And you said that your grandparents, as elected officials, you saw them helping people. Do you take a lot of what they did when you were watching them, and you think, okay, what does District 5 need? Or in your case, Senate District 29, but we're focused on 5. Will you be able to literally see what they need and then try to apply what you've learned to try to help them to get something out of DC?
Absolutely. There isn't a day that goes by that I don't think about them. I mean, they were just phenomenal people. And think about their service and just, some of the life lessons that they've, given to me, again, be impeccable with your word, show up for your community, advocate for your community. I mean, those are the life lessons that, that they've given to me, that I've watched them do. And I would like to think that that's what I do, right? Mm-hmm. I show up for my community, I advocate for my community, I stand up for my values, our collective values. And so, those are the life lessons that, that both my grandparents and my mom and dad, have shown my sister and I.
I love it. You got a sister? Have I met your sister?
Yeah. I don't think so.
No, I thought she was my dog.
A teacher down in Florida. So again, another reason why, I'm fighting for our public education, and she's in a whole different environment in Florida. I mean, it's kind of similar in the sense that whatever Florida does, Indiana's about to do, or whatever Indiana's doing, Florida's about to do. So, we kind of commiserate when we get together.
Yeah. So. And we don't have 80-degree weather in February, which is just mean. I mean, if we're going to be like Florida, let's be like Florida.
Let's do it, right?
So let's get into some topics. Times right now are wild, bro. Wild. You've got ICE shooting civilians on the streets of Minneapolis. You have You have immigrants who are being detained in squalid conditions. Yes. You have a president who is embarrassing us on the national stage. Every day. When you're in Congress, even though we know that ICE is setting up facilities in Carmel. We all know this, right? As you're thinking, go ahead.
I was just going to say that, their release said that they're not going to confirm that they're setting up operations, but I mean, all signs point that way.
Absolutely. And here's the funny part. They know they better take their behinds up to Hamilton County. Don't come down here in Marion County, because you don't want that smoke. But anyway, so talk to us, because when you're in Congress, these are the issues that you will have to deal with. What are your thoughts on ICE and how America? We'll take one at a time. What are your thoughts on ICE?
No, thank you for the opportunity to kind of talk about that, because it's something very troubling to me that I'm seeing, and just across this nation, we are seeing federal agents that are literally terrorizing our communities. And, and we're seeing communities live in fear. And, and as a local law enforcement officer, I've got to be scratching and shaking my head because all the years of trust that I'm doing to build that relationship with the community is really kind of shot because of what, these so-called cosplaying federal agents are doing, right? And so let's talk about that, right? I mean, we need them to be unmasked, right? And I think that they're doing a lot of this stuff right now because they can hide behind their mask. And so if they're unmasked, then I think we'll see a little bit of them coming, back down to earth a little bit in terms of what they're doing. The fact that, they only get 47 days of training, I mean, come on. And the reason that's 47 days is because guess who's the 47th president? Donald Trump, right? And so the fact that, that you can have more hours as a barber, that's required of you and not as a federal agent is beyond ludicrous to me, right? We also need to make sure that we have signed warrants, signed judicial warrants. So agents are just busting into people's doors and dragging, some of our elderly neighbors or even kids for that matter outside of their home. Are you kidding me? But this is what's happening in Donald Trump's America. And as a member of Congress, I need to stand up to this administration because Victoria Spartz and this Congress has completely abdicated their duties. And as a member of Congress, I will be at every ICE facility in this state as doing my duty as a member of Congress and doing congressional oversight and inspections of every single facility. Now, of course, Kristi Noem signed the executive order or executive decision that you have to give, I think a week or 2 weeks advance notice, which I'll do. But, I want eyeballs on every single ICE facility in our state.
I love that. And I love that how forceful you are with what's going on, because it's really, really sad to see humans treating other humans the way that they're treating them.
Yeah. And but, two more things, if I may, on this topic.
Sure. This is your show, baby.
I'm kind of passionate on this, especially because of what we're seeing, across this nation. I mean, this administration is literally gaslighting us and telling us that we are not seeing things happening with our own eyes. Right. So Kristi Noem needs to be held accountable. Bovino needs to be held accountable. Homan, Miller, for that matter. Anybody who's got their fingerprints on this needs to be hauled in front of Congress and explain why these tactics are so egregious. Right. And then the final thing I'll say on the topic is that body-worn cameras, they need to happen with these federal agents. I mean, some of these incidents and sometimes some of these fatal incidents that we're seeing is only because of bystander videos. And so I'm telling folks to go out there, do that legal observer training. Anytime you see an ICE agent, make sure that you are videoing because you could be the person who helps, say whether or not, these ICE agents are acting in accordance of the law.
Man, that's some serious stuff. And it's scary because, again, we're watching those of us that know a little bit about history are watching the exact replica of Nazi Germany and the brown coats and the brown shirts or whatever they were, the stormtroopers or whatever they were, just rounding up people and people staying silent and complicit. But one thing that I gotta say,
What's that?
Americans Americans be indignant about being an American. We sometimes will go to other countries and be mad because they're not speaking English. Like, am I wrong? I know that's ignorant, but that's how indignant we are.
We heard that with Bad Bunny's halftime show. I mean, what a beautiful halftime show!
It was great. Everybody was there, right?
It was so good. But then you saw people on social media, which I know we're not supposed to read the comments, right? But then you saw people like, why didn't they speak English? It's like, that's the whole point, is that we're supposed to love our neighbors, right? We're supposed to, embrace the diversity for what it is. It only makes the fabric of our society even better. And so I loved that halftime show.
I loved it too. And I like my halftime show with seasoning. Anyway, I was going to say, and I wonder if you kind of agree with me. Americans are so indignant about being Americans and the freedoms that we have always had. Some of us more than others. We're not discounting that. But it seems like with the actions that you saw with the people in Minneapolis, they were like, oh, no, you're not finna come for my rights, my freedoms, my right to protest, my First Amendment, all of that. Do you get a sense that there's an indignation about being an American, that they're like, okay, wait a minute, and that they're going to show up in this election?
Yeah, I mean, we are seeing a welcomed, folks who are kind of, really paying attention to politics these days, and you and I have been screaming this for the past,
10
8,
plus years.
12 years, but welcome to the party, right? Glad to have it. But I do think, we are seeing, because of this administration, so that's one positive thing that I can say that's coming out of the Trump administration, is that he is waking people up, to, what's happening, because at the end of the day, politics is everything that we do,
Everything.
right? Everything. And the more local you get, like, for example, your town councils, your state senators and state representatives, I would argue that that's probably more impactful than probably something at the national level, like presidential politics, right? But, I'm just so happy that people are paying attention. And I really think they woke up a sleeping giant.
Oh, yeah.
When they went through that redistricting stuff, even my own district inbox was on fire. My phone calls to my office was on fire. And Dana, I led that charge on, the redistricting efforts for the Senate Democratic Caucus. When I was on the New York Times Facebook page and, getting interviewed by MS Now, I was like, oh my goodness, my friends and family across the nation were like, you're all over the news.
Yeah.
But it was important that we highlighted what we were doing, because we set the narrative early. And then we were just asking questions, right? So the only thing that we really have as a member of the super minority is the power of the question. And so we just question them, where did this come from? Who's going to pay for it? All of that stuff. And so, so when I say that, I successfully stood up to Donald Trump, let me tell you, pushing that red button for no on the redistricting bill, I was just like, take that, Donald Trump.
I know, that's right.
The best feeling ever. And you know what? I will do that as a member of Congress. I'm going to stand up to the president. I've done it before, and I will continue to do it again.
I love it. And I watched the live streams on the debates on that. And I love the way you guys grilled them, like, who's paying for it? Where did it come from? Where did this map come from? And the way you question, okay, I ain't gonna lie to you. I got to give it to you. You have this hometown, small town feel about the way you come across. And nobody could ever get mad at you, because you're like, so... do you know where this map came from? Do you know who? And it was so I'm
gonna stress you down, but I'm gonna do it with a smile on.
Yeah, you do it. Here's a piece of pie. While you eating this sweet, let me give you something. But let's talk about something that I know that is probably a little less in your wheelhouse than usual, because you've been at the state level, and that's just national politics, right?
Yes.
We have Ukraine, we have Gaza, we have dropping bombs on ship boats in the Caribbean. We attacked Nigeria. We're threatening Iran. When you think about all of and again, once again, it's our Congress right now is abdicating, like you said, abdicating their role. What are your thoughts on our role as a nation on the world stage?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's in conflict right now. Donald Trump ran for election or re-election, depending on how you look at it, on this America First platform priority, right? But we're too busy, putting our nose in everybody else around the world. And sometimes that's warranted and sometimes it's not, right? And so, but at the same time, there's a lot of people who are like, okay, but there's stuff happening in the United States of America, and let's address those issues, which we're currently not doing, So, some of these, hot button issues, I want people to know that, as your member of Congress, of course, I'm going to be the one occupying that seat, right? But as I've always operated, I need folks to call the office, to email the office. I'm going to make myself available, being back in the district on a regular basis, and so I need people to tell me what they think, because I am not the person who owns that seat. The people of the 5th Congressional District own that seat. And so a lot of these issues, I'm going to really rely on the folks to kind of help guide me to make those decisions.
I love it.
But but on the Ukraine matter, I mean, let's just my opponent is one of the only, I think, if not the only Ukrainian member of the United States Congress. She
Mm-hmm.
could be the leading voice on Ukrainian issues,
Yep, she could be.
but no one knows where she stands on those issues, right? And not even Putin, not even, Zelensky, or even, the president for
Nobody
that.
knows where the
You
Ukrainian
know,
stands on the Ukraine war. Ain't that
that's
something? That should tell you everything you need to know about that individual right there.
right. But here's what I want to say about that is that, as she's off doing her own thing and crashing congressional delegations, what I think is important is that we need to make sure that, we protect Ukraine,
Mm-hmm.
right? We don't want to, give Ukraine up, or let other dictators have this sense of where, well, we can just go and, take it over. And America's not going to help them. And so we really need to be careful with how we approach this. And so I want to make sure that Ukraine has what they need to defend themselves, because at the end of the day, I'm sure the rest of the European countries are looking around and also wondering, am I going to be next? Is China going to do that? So I think that we
Taiwan,
need to be
yep.
careful. Yeah.
Well, we're starting to see the European Union do things differently. They're operating in different space because they no longer trust us. I mean, they literally set this government, this administration up by feeding them some lies to see if it would get back. Like, so how do you think we need to go about trying to re-earn the trust of our European allies? And not just that, but I also believe that it is our our country's history on race and how we view nations of color that have prevented us from expansion into the African continent, and that has allowed the Chinese to get in there, extract natural resources, and so on and so forth. But,
Yeah.
but we have the opportunity to do those things as well. But we've got to repair this relationship. What do you think is necessary for us to begin the process of repairing these relationships?
That's a great question. And I think the first thing that we need to do is we need to be impeccable with our word. I kind of started off by saying that, that's one of the life lessons that, people in my life, my circle have taught me. I think of people, when they're doing deals with President Trump, they know it to be chaotic, right? And so, he's not impeccable with his word.
Not at all. He's the biggest liar in chief ever.
Yeah. And I distinctly remember a presidential candidate named Kamala Harris basically calling it out, and saying that, he shouldn't be trusted at the helm to do this because, our countries aren't going to, trust him. And so that trust has got to be there. And it goes back to what I was saying earlier, is that if we're going to do something, we need to do it. Right. We can't just, be out there and then not doing it and not following through, because that's how the mistrust happens. So.
Well, we know that the last shutdown in Congress was over healthcare and
That's
premiums going through the roof. Talk to us about your vision for and what you've heard. Right, you're not. I know it's not just your vision, but what is your vision for healthcare for Americans?
Yeah, I mean, this is one of the things that, I've worked on in the state Senate, is making sure that healthcare does not bankrupt you. I mean, we are all one car accident, one accident away from, receiving an emergency room bill that could cripple us. And so, we really have to think about that. And Senator Codora actually has a bill that I've been working with him on before the state Senate right now, dealing with medical debt, and making sure that, Hoosiers are aware of these different payment plans that are afforded to you. And sometimes people don't know about that until you're actually receiving, a debt collection notice, right? And I had unfortunately had to go to the ER last summer, and so I had to pay off, that bill. And so yeah, so people, and here's the other thing too, is that those costs are going to get passed on to, to consumers, right? So if people aren't covered, then that's where those costs are going to get passed on. Because, so I just think that, and the fact that Victoria Spartz didn't, extend those subsidies is a huge slap, in everybody's face when it comes to healthcare. And not only that, but the one big, beautiful bill, Dana.
Yeah, that ugly thing.
That ugly thing. That starts after the 2020 midterm elections. Convenient that they did that because they know that you can't, it's basic psychology. You can't give, candy to a kid and then take it away, right? It's the same thing with healthcare. And that's why you saw so many people come out in support of, making sure that the ACA was continued, right? That's why you saw Senator McCain's monumental moment on the U.S.
Thumbs
Senate.
down, baby.
Yeah, when he did the thumbs down, because even Republicans know that this was a widely popular. Does it need to be tweaked and reformed?
Sure.
Absolutely. But when you ask Republicans what their plan is,
They got none.
they got none.
They got
So
none.
I acknowledge that it's not perfect. And I acknowledge that there's lots of work that needs to happen. However, it's what we have, and it's what is protecting a lot of people. And particularly, I think about, I didn't have this when I was 25, 26 years old, right? And so I would have loved to have stayed on my, my parents' health insurance until I got to be that age. But, and there is so much more that we could be doing in this space. My opponent, Victoria Sparks, pretends and claims to be a healthcare expert, but what does she have to show for it?
Nothing.
Yeah.
And there are a few hospital deserts, healthcare deserts in District 5, because District 5 isn't just Hamilton County and Boone County and Hendricks County, the Geist area of Indianapolis. There are some deserts, and there are going to be people who are going to be an hour helicopter ride away from their life being saved. And a lot of that comes down to that. Another thing I want to touch on, these tariffs.
Oh, yes.
You have got to. I almost went into act blue mode. My bad. Eventually you're going to have conversations with folks on the other side of the aisle.
Yes.
Right? Because you've got to earn votes everywhere.
That's right.
How will you talk to them about tariffs?
Well, I think it goes back to, the affordability issue that everybody is feeling the squeeze. I mean, whether you are in Carmel, whether you are in Kokomo, you feel the squeeze not only at the checkout, but just in your basic daily lives. Your monthly bills for utilities are going up. And you've got, these giant corporations that, put their bank accounts over yours. And so, we have a monopoly problem, and I'm going to tackle it by restoring the competition to the market. And I think the one thing that I would say to, people across the aisle is that I know when you go to the grocery store, you see your, grocery bill higher than normal. I know that that your utilities are higher than normal. And why is that? Why is it that the president, said on day one he was going to bring down the cost of groceries, bring down the cost of eggs, and why hasn't that happened yet? Why is, housing so expensive? Well, you got to get the lumber and you got to get all the other materials to help build that home. Oh, wait, there's tariffs on those products. And so one of the things that I just saw the United States Congress do recently was that they put the vote to the Congress in terms of rolling back some of these tariffs. Now, Trump is just unilaterally, imposing tariffs because I think he likes to beat his chest and, thump his chest and say that he's doing it. And he's also saying that, that we're reaping in a lot of money from these tariffs. But I don't know about you, but I haven't seen that money, and so I think what we need to do is we need to put a vote to the United States Congress, just much like what they did recently with those tariffs, and let the people weigh in and let members of Congress be on the record on whether or not they support it or oppose it. And I think if you see that, you'll see, a lot of people kind of backing away because nobody wants to be, the recipient of higher taxes, because let's face it, that's what a tariff is.
Yes.
So I think, and people get a little squirrely around that tax word, and rightfully so. And so I think, we should definitely put that to the United States Congress for a vote.
I love it. So, okay, we're at, me and you could talk forever because we're friends like that. But I know how valuable your time is. Was there something that you wanted to share with the people that I didn't actually ask you about? Because one of the things I know about you, you are always prepared. So Was there something that you wanted to mention that I didn't ask you about?
Yeah. So another piece to my platform is what I'm calling affordability, which we just kind of talked about. Accountability, which I kind of think we talked about, making sure that we're holding some of these agencies accountable to especially what we're seeing with our own eyes. But the last piece is what I'm calling care. And I'm talking about, again, when we're sitting around the dinner table with families, at least this is what I'm hearing as a state senator. What I'm hearing is that, gosh, JD, healthcare is expensive. Daycare is expensive.
Ooh. We have some of the highest daycare costs in the nation.
Yes, we do. We also have some of the highest healthcare costs, which we're part of the General Assembly is trying to bring down some of those healthcare costs, which I voted for, to bring down those healthcare costs, those prescription drug costs, and to make sure that we have access to get healthcare. I've helped author bills in terms of just different things to help bring down some of those costs. And what I would say to you is that this part of this care, mental health care, is another piece to this puzzle. And we had a lot of money in our budget recently for mental health, and even public health for that matter. And we took it away. But we know that mental health is going to cost the state of Indiana $4 billion if we don't get a hold of it. And so not only are Hoosiers struggling with mental health, but just really all Americans across the country are struggling with with mental health. And so that care aspect it speaks directly to who I am, is that I deeply care about the people that I'm representing, whether it be in the Senate or in the United States Congress. I care like they're my family members. And the other thing that I want people to know is that, I have a master's degree in education from Purdue, with a specific emphasis on human services. So I look at legislation, I look at the votes I take through the lens of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Do people have shelter? Do people have food, water? And then you can kind of go up from there. If you don't have that, the basics, the foundation of it, it's just not going to work, So that care piece is really important. So it's going to be affordability, accountability, and care. And the last thing I'll say is that Washington, in my mind, feels like the doors are closed. It's too far away. And those are the decisions that are made about us, but never with us, right? And so, and I'm not the expert, as I mentioned before, in our community. I'm going to be read up, and I'm going to have, obviously, policy briefings and attending meetings and things of that nature. But I never want to pretend to be the expert, in our community. And that's really where I'm going to rely on you, the people, to help, bring some of these, nuanced issues to my attention, so that way I can continue to fight for them. So I'm not asking, for your vote to go to DC. I'm asking you to come with me to DC, because, and again, as a state senator, I use my social media to peel back the curtain to show people what's it like to be a member of the General Assembly. And I'm going to do the exact same thing when I go to Congress, is to peel back that curtain to make it less scary, to make you more informed and more knowledgeable, because that way you can hold us accountable, myself included, when you think I'm doing something good, or when you think that, there's a vote that I missed, So that's what I want to do as I think about this campaign.
I love it. All right, give us your part. Well, first of all, tell people where they can find you.
Yes, so I am on all of the platforms. So I'm on X. I'm also on Facebook, JD Ford for Congress. Also on TikTok, as you mentioned, JD Ford for Congress. And then you can find me on my website at electjdford.com. And then if you have a question that you want to talk to one of us directly, hello@electjdford.com.
I love it. And do you have any volunteer events coming up or anything that people should know about?
Oh my gosh, yeah. So everything is on the website, and so this week we are getting out, talking to voters. This Saturday I'll be with the Delaware County folks, kind of just meeting with them, talking with them, listening to them, showing up for them. But all of our events are scheduled on our website. Just click the events page.
I love it. JD Ford running for Congress in the 5th District. Senator JD Ford, I'm sorry. I see, that's what happens.
You will always know me as JD.
But how do I answer the phone when you call? I always
Senator!
say, Senator!
I appreciate that.
I love you, and I hope you know that that I really appreciate the way you show up. And the way you fight, you've been fighting for us Democrats. Like I said, I know y'all need therapy after session, and I don't know, because it's crazy. I'm like, this crazy. Yeah. But you continue to show up, and you continue to just be, and I know it's going to drive you nuts, but you just show up and continue to just be a sweet guy. Like, right. I just think you're one of the sweetest.
That's my superpower.
It is. You are sugary sweet. I think I got a cavity loving on you so much. I do believe. All right. Thank you so much for taking time to chat with me today.
All right. Take care. Have a good one.
Hey, guys, listen. I want y'all to know he didn't say it. And I need to remind you. I know that we have people saying they're not taking corporate PAC money. I know people are saying that they want to run grassroots. I get all of that. I really do. But if you like what JD Ford is talking about, click on his donate link right there. Give him $5, $10, or maybe even become a recurring donor for his campaign, because in order for him to be successful through the primary and through to the general, he has to be competitive. And one of the ways, like I've said with every other candidate that's come on the show, is that we have to also show our financial support. Now, don't look at it as I'm giving money to JD. Look at it as you're investing in your community by sending a quality representative to Congress. All right. Okay, wait, y'all, this is a first. I was giving my closing, and I usually have my candidates stay online until I get done. And he was listening to my donate to his campaign. And then he says, not on screen, but he says, can I say one thing about that? So I am bringing, yes, all of this will be edited in. JD, what's the one thing?
Well, the one thing I just want to say real quickly is that I was at the Adam Kinzinger event last week, and Matt McNally, who is the 5th District Vice Chair, told the crowd that we send $7 million out of state. And think about what that money could do for us as candidates in the state. And so that's what I wanted to share. So thank you for letting me do that.
No problems. And so now don't go away, JD, but you're not going to be on screen. I got to go back to again and make my fundraising pitch, because I want all of these candidates that I've interviewed to have as much of a chance to win their election as possible. And that also, Turn Left is about bringing you that information, so you are now an informed voter. Okay, I still have more candidates that have signed up to come on and do these shorts running for Congress. I still have my live feed on Thursday where I usually have 2 candidates come on. We at Turn Left are doing everything we can to bring you these candidates. Also, look for my new podcast called Next Gen In, where where young people are talking to other young people about politics. All right, so keep looking for us. Follow us on all the socials. You find me on Spotify, YouTube, you know all the places. But until next time, I'll holla. Peace. Turn Left is the property of Black Pearl IT Solutions, executive producer Indiana's own Dana Black. Music by Dorian and 22 from Pixabay.